Do roll call, please.
Bill Falsey,
Here.
Terrence Kelly, Kathleen King,
Here.
David Nesbitt is excused, Keith Silver.
Here.
Also here is Dee Ennis, Deputy Municipal Attorney, and Glenda Regnart, Administrative Hearing Officer, and we have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda, and we've had a request to potentially move something to the front of the agenda. Would you like to explain what?
Yeah, the two matters are regarding the ethics code rewrite that David and I attended at the last subcommittee meeting of the Assembly Ethics and Election Committee. An update on that. There's some information I'd like to share with the board. And then also materials provided by Sarah Josephson, the attorney for the firefighters union, regarding ethics training. She forwarded some materials which I'd like to forward on to you. I'll also later on forward it on an electronic copy. But if I could do those toward the beginning of the agenda, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Is there any objection to moving that prior to A, review disclosure forms? Not seeing any. We'll change the agenda to that. So do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm the only one that was here at the meeting of November 19th. I would request that we push that off till we have the other two members. Dr. Kelly and David Nesbitt. You read, anybody, we have a motion for 4B, the minutes for the meeting on January 14th.
I move to approve the January 14th meeting. And unless there's objection, I can move to approve B, C, D, and D. Minutes of the meetings of
So,
November 1st.
Bill's accelerating the process and it works for me. Do you have any objections?
I just wondered on 4E, the minutes of February 11th, I think we should reflect under 6E that Bill and I left the meeting so as not to imply that we participated in that discussion. I don't know if that's...
I think that's well taken.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go ahead and second that amendment?
Sure. That's a friendly amendment, so I'll take that.
Okay. So did you catch that, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. So, now without hearing objection, the minutes for B, C, D, and E are accepted with E being a slight amendment. And then E, you're up.
Okay, so as part of our last notice of potential violation, we had indicated we wanted the union leadership to provide ethics training to the firefighters. And this is half of what they provided, and I would pass it out. I will send this to you electronically. So let me pass some of this out. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I kind of got my staff to do it double-sided. And if you want to just peruse through this, but essentially what this is, apparently it sounds like they already had this in the works. This is actually an ethics course, it looks like, taught by the National Union Administration for union leaders. So their plan is it was either yesterday, either Monday and Tuesday of this week or Monday and Tuesday of next week. I have been able to confirm that with the attorney, that they were intending to have a training for all the union leaders, the stewards, and then from there they would disseminate further information. And Sarah Josephson actually, about at least 10 days ago, forwarded this over to me, more than that probably, and my initial reaction, well, the board will have to review it, it's not my decision, but it looked to me like it's a union ethical program, that it does not incorporate municipal ethics, which it clearly doesn't. There's some page reference where you should know that. And so then Ms. Josephson has requested that I send her a PowerPoint, and we have various PowerPoints, maybe you have to clean them up to update them with the gifts, that we could send to her. And again, with a public record, we should send it to her. I've suggested, however, that those PowerPoints are really very generic. They would never have covered the problem that came before us. And that really I thought it was more the board's intent that be supplemented by something. From their side of the table, well, what do you want? I mean, so there is sort of a disconnect there. So I suggested to her that maybe she and one of the union stewards and myself and a board member meet together, look at the PowerPoint and say, here's some of the other issues that have come up, and do you, maybe even a member of the fire department administration, and say, here's some of the issues that have come up. Let's interweave those. It's, add a couple PowerPoints to address those, for instance, the uniform thing, and update the gifts. So that was my suggestion to her, and she said, well, just let us know. So some frustration. It's pretty hard for them to put on a municipal ethics thing without taking our PowerPoint and slightly modifying it. And all they're really aware of probably is this one incident.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure they're going to disclose 10 other things that they've been asked. So it seemed to me maybe that's it. I think this is clearly not what the board was looking for. And I don't know if they were doing this anyway, interestingly enough. There's some interesting, I mean, this is great training. And certainly we don't want to second guess what they're providing for their leadership.
But it is only to the leadership.
Well, yeah, at this level.
And I thought we were looking, I gathered from what you just said, that we're looking for training for all members of the fire
Well,
department.
the idea was then the stewards would go out and do training for the entire fire department. So they would take this and whatever we worked up and then go out further to the membership.
So, but would the stewards be like appointed ethics officers?
Oh,
of the
absolutely
fire-
not, no.
Okay, so that's,
So I think
I'm
we
not
were
sure.
looking at the development of some materials. Yeah, no, so I'm not sure that works very well either. But I wanted to bring this before you, and I assume when you look through it that you'll say, yeah, it's actually great stuff probably, but it doesn't cover municipal ethics, and that if you have any suggestions, again, my suggestion would obviously give them a PowerPoint, but if you have any suggestions how we might take a very generic, simple PowerPoint and make it more, fill in between the blanks.
well, looking at this, and this is a great start, but I'm also looking at this thing, it could potentially be a little out of date. I mean, some of the stuff here is almost 60 years old. I'm looking at one here approved by the council in 1957.
Well, this is also pitched to the union officers, not
Right.
to the firefighters themselves. So it seems like
Although
the wrong audience in some ways.
It absolutely is. And of course, the vast majority of the firefighters are union members. I mean, actually, the people out on the line. Very small number of unrepresented people at the fire department. But yeah, it definitely is the wrong audience. There is a section here, I think, called prohibited conduct, where you could incorporate. It mentions, I believe, reference to other codes, and you could insert something there. I mean, my personal feeling when I looked at this, I think it's a different audience. It's absolutely different, and it's great that they're going to do this for their union leaders, but it's not really what we were looking at. And then the second question is, assuming we get a PowerPoint and try to get that enhanced to be more specific to the fire department, is it appropriate for the stewards to get groups of people together? And maybe it is with someone from the board or myself as the city ethics officer. So maybe that is appropriate.
Well, my thoughts are, number one, this is a lot sooner than I expected to get anything. We gave them, as I recall, 90 days. So to give them credit, this is a start. So, you know, they're jumping on it as opposed to waiting. And, you know, what you're suggesting is, you know, a PowerPoint that we've modified to include some of the issues makes sense to me. And I'm sure the stewards need to have their own type of training, and haven't had, obviously, having a chance to
Absolutely.
absorb all of these, what are they, 26, 27 pages of stuff here. But I'm sure it's a start, and then go through that. We're envisioning, what about just a couple hour training sequence?
The ethics PowerPoint you can do in 20 minutes or an hour, depending on how much you want to give examples and have people answer questions. So I generally pare it down to 20, but I'm not sure how helpful sometimes that interactive process is. So it's actually fairly short.
So something that can be accomplished in a safety meeting or whatever?
Yeah, an hour, yep. Yeah. Well, I think the AFD could arrange, 4 or 5 trainings for the majority of their personnel.
The most recent communication that the board provided to Ms. Josephson, is that in the packet? She asked for reconsideration and then the board responded.
That's not in here, that answer?
That's what I was looking for.
No, because it's been closed, so it's not on the
Oh,
new agenda.
okay.
Okay.
I could forward that to you.
Well, I have it, I just
Yeah.
didn't, I wanted to take a look at it while we were, just to see what that letter where we left it off. So, because I'm trying to remember how it was left off. They requested reconsideration of having to go to UAA and take a class, and in lieu of, had a proposal. And so how did we leave it with them? Specific to those 2 guys, we wanted them to.
I didn't think they had to do anything. It was simply
Okay.
that the union would.
Was that it?
Provide training.
Okay.
In response to her offer that the union would provide training, that we would accept that, and that was.
Yeah, 'cause there's no specific punishment to them
No.
individually. This board decided not to do it. I can't.
Yeah, so it was aimed at it was a response to her letter requesting to offer that. And, now, she did mention that they would be at this training, those 2 firefighters. But again, I obviously I think a municipal-oriented presentation is what's in order. So I guess unless anybody has any suggestions, my suggestion to the board would be to say, yes, let's send a PowerPoint over. Are people comfortable with somebody from the board, myself, meeting with, and myself, so I'd like if one of you could attend, meet with Sarah and a union member and try to hash some of this stuff out?
I'm comfortable with that
Yeah,
suggestion.
that makes sense to me.
No, that's not necessarily something we have to vote on. It's
No,
not an action item, but
And in terms of people, I think it should probably be you, David, or Terry, as people who are aware of the issues that have come before the board in the last 5 years, have a better sense of that, just a sort of historical knowledge.
In my opinion, in my recollection, the only thing that's come to us from the fire department were 2 things. One of which the fire department requested that they could go to have lunch over at
Olive Garden.
Olive Garden, and then this other issue.
Mhm.
There's not been,
Yeah.
because the boot issue was way before my time.
Keith, I think you're correct, but I think just sort of a general historical knowledge of
overall.
the issues that come before the board
Right.
Might be helpful, so.
Okay, well, we can work that
That
out
out
between
next
the 3
time.
of us.
Okay, or, yeah, or.
Dr. Kelly's got the most, time in the seat,
Mhm.
but I think 3 of us can work out something.
Okay. Okay, should I go on to the next item?
Sure.
Okay, the next item was, remember there was some mention of appearing before the Assembly Subcommittee on Ethics and Elections because there was mention of a rewrite, a potential rewrite. And we're, as you see on agenda, this board was proposing to rewrite numerous subsections. I think the Assembly's gist, or that subcommittee's gist, is that they'd, quote, would rather turn a 55-page ethics code back down to a 5-page ethics code, end quote. And I think that's because it has turned out to be unwieldy. that dividing it into the three sections has turned to be the, the three types of groups, the appointed officials, the elected officials, and the employees has been problematic. And, anybody who's been on the board for any period of time knows how difficult that has been to administer. And so they asked David and I to consider that. And actually, I think David and I were both pretty excited about that. But I think it could be redone. It doesn't need to be a 3-year committee process, which is what it turned out to be last time. David and I did meet briefly with Julia, and Tucker, Assembly Council, who was intimately involved in drafting the code, and she said, yeah, there's been enough time now to know some of the problems. And in that line, so David and I met one other time about that. In that line, I wanted to show you, we were looking around at different codes, because I said, you just don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And I have copied the state code from the executive branch. And if you look through it, there's a lot to be said about the simplicity of this code section, and especially for those of us who've been on for the last couple of years, many of the code sections would have addressed some of those problems. Clearly, the gift section would have to be updated. So there'd be modifications to this document, but it's about 10 pages. It's not bad. Now, the procedures for a violation are not in here. That'd be another 2 or 3 pages. But it's much simpler. And I think what David and I thought was that probably he and I could quickly go through this and redline it. And I think Bill had expressed an interest, and Terry in rewriting, and to involve them at some point. But do this quickly and see, what the product would be, and not have committee meetings, and not, just our simple rewrites have just taken a lot of time. So I was going to pass those around, just to, if you would look at them in your spare time the next week or so. And then besides that, this is another thing that the state does. They have an ethics information thing, and they have these little smiley faces about what you can and cannot do. Now, I told you what, as an ethics officer, I get asked these questions constantly, and so I'm interested in looking at this. My first read was, it seems a little bit simplistic, but maybe that's the problem. I think it's simplistic, and it's not. Can an employee park in their work area in a public parking lot with political signs in their in the bed of their car? Can they have political signs all over their car because they're running? One of the mayor's candidates is one of our employees, and so his stuff's everywhere. And how does this interact with municipal policies? For instance, we already say no buttons in the workplace, that it's distracting and you just need a clear line. Now that's a policy, that's an administrative policy. But anyway, I thought I'd copy it for you if you had any ideas and suggestions. I was excited about the state code. I thought it was much simpler, and one of the initial suggestions too was to take the current code we have and then rewrite it and amend it section by section. Well, you can all tell that's almost an impossible task. That's
Huge
forever. Yeah. And I think what we've all learned is it's difficult dividing into 3 sections. It's just impossible. We all have learned a lot about political activity, that section, and how unwieldy that one. So that we have some awareness of the things that repetitively come before the board. So let me pass this out. There's the one thing. Here's the other. And again, that's not something to absorb at today's meeting, but if you would look at that and get maybe the next meeting, and or earlier, give some feedback to David and I. Let me get back to the other 2 board members. Now, interesting enough, that this is the the state legislature's executive ethics code. They also have one for the legislature, but that actually wasn't that helpful, I thought. Even portions of it. And, one of the things, you look at some of this, like declaration of policy, I would make that a paragraph long. And, there's some of the, just call it as gobbledygook language, just take it out. You don't need an 8-line statement of policy. This is to make everybody behave themselves. moral compass, or, you know, that a lot of this could be really shortened. I think one problem with our current code is that nobody reads it because it's too long, it's too confusing. Employees get some basic training on it when they first are hired. New elected officials get some basic training, but to have something that's this simple with an index.
Well, I appreciate you putting that together. I was, privately I was resistant at first, but it sounds like it's gonna make things a whole lot better. And I agree that maybe starting over with something fresh, using other examples of something that's working is better than modifying the current one. Because the current one is so convoluted and so difficult. Yeah, I don't have the handle on it, but Dr. Kelly does. Because it is so, I know what's in it, but I don't have it memorized to the point that he does. So, having something that's more simple to use, as long as we can catch the gaps that we found.
Right. And the other thing is there's pros and cons to having it consistent with the state act, or more consistent, because it wouldn't just be a duplicate of it. Because you have some precedents, you have some cases. So there's also, there can be some advantages, but we don't want it to be a mini state act either.
It doesn't look like they have a breakdown.
No, they don't.
Electeds versus.
But this is for the executive branch, and that's probably why. I don't know
Okay.
how they define executive, because it seemed to cover employees and elected officials. So I didn't really look at that too much yet, just
Right, because they have
I-
boards and commissions too.
Yeah, I bet you they have their own thing, but again, when you read this, having read our code, doesn't this cover most of it?
Right.
It really does cover most of it. And is it a matter of looking at our code, are there some really important principles that need to be captured?
Right.
And then, I guess, just sort of a question to people, like Bill expressed some interest. I don't know if you expressed interest or people expressed interest in putting me on this committee. I wasn't sure which way that went. But you seem to be very attentive to details, and whether, looking at our code, maybe one of the roles you might play is looking at our current code and saying, hey, this seems to be missing. And I don't mean line for line, but
Right.
this concept seems to be missing, or,
Yeah.
because that would be one thing we'd probably do pretty quickly.
Well, an example, we don't want to miss a large group of people, whether that was commission members or it was assembly members or it was, as long as everybody's included.
Yeah. And, there are some differences, for instance, what gifts different groups can accept. There are some differences, but there's so much more in common than there are differences that to break that out in three. And I don't know, Bill, whether that'd be too large of a task. So, I'm also cognizant of your time. But that's, I think, David and I, looked at this, met with Julia briefly. We haven't gone over this with Julia yet, but is bring this back to the board, say, look, this is what's being requested. Both of us really pretty much like the state code, thought it was a great working document. The next thing is to find out what is it missing. It'd be easy to redline out the superfluous language and stuff that just is inconsistent with what we do on a municipal level. That would be relatively simple. I could probably do that, 3 to 5 hours. The more time consuming would probably be going through sections and figuring out what is missing. And maybe that's something we could divide up, too, that not have one person try to go through a 50-page code. So, just thoughts, if everybody can look at this.
Is it part because the old code, when Ken Stott was doing it, code was being written differently at that point? There's different styles that develop over time. And there was,
I get the sense that there are all sorts of happenings going on that touched on ethics and with an overlay between ethics and the political process. And they kept trying to account for that. Well, what about in this type of case? And what about in this? And so Ken Stout knew every other provision seems like it was based in something that had happened recently in municipal politics or state politics. And so they had learned a lesson, so they were trying to capture some of those lessons. So I'm not sure it was different code writing. And I think at a certain point, they started out with a committee, and it just got so out of hand, and people will finally quit the committee, and finally Julia and Ken Stout just did it. And so, you know, at some point you get down a certain track and you're stuck, and you don't wanna go back to the beginning again. And apparently it was fairly a controversial time when they did this. This was 2007, so it was in the Reagan administration. I'm not sure why it was so controversial in that particular period of time.
This is actually pretty handy. I
Isn't
know
it
it's got
nice?
smiley faces and sad faces, but.
Oh, that one too, yeah.
It's still pretty, I think for most individuals, that those examples and case little hypotheticals, those are really very helpful to
Yeah.
draw points home.
And see, really, this could be a P&P for the employee's procedure and policy, so that actually could just go in our P&P.
Mm-hmm.
We have a P&P right now in ethics that says what our ethics code says.
Oh.
What? The same thing. Minus a few words. I don't know why it does that. So, and see, I think all of us could supplement, and have ideas about a few other smiley faces that could go in here.
I can think of a few, but not having read all of this, but I can see, I think a simplified code would actually encourage compliance rather than going, oh dear God, I don't even wanna go look through that whole thing to try to determine whether or not, you know, and this other one wraps around, you know,
Yeah.
somewhat convoluted, especially with respect to the mayor. That, you know, sometimes they're included, sometimes they're not, and
Yeah.
it just makes it very, very difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've struggled with that in my 5+ years on the board, so I can see
Yeah.
that it may be time to rewrite.
Well, would it be appropriate at this point maybe to ask if there's be a couple people that would take one section each, like the employee section, and see what, you know, read over this, not so much the smiley face one. Although if anybody independently could read that smiley face and have their own suggestions of what they would add, because then that would be more of a P&P, but let's not get too distracted by smiley face. Again, I think it's a great idea at some point. But read, you'd have to read through this whole thing because everything is contained all the way through. And then C, maybe take the current code section on employees. Now that's gonna be the big one. But take that section and see what of that, maybe highlight it with a yellow pen, what of that is not captured in here. Whether it's the same or not, what's not captured. And if we could have maybe 3 people do that, one section each.
Yeah, I'll do one. I don't care.
Okay. Do you care, well, you know, you've been on some of the boards and commissions, right? Yeah.
Two.
Well, no, you have. Why don't we you have a very extensive background.
But you
How about
have
if you-
background in the state boards, which I don't have.
Yeah.
I got mine's all municipal.
But you had ethics training with the boards, didn't you?
Right, and I had it with the state too.
Yeah.
The state's got a really funny little video too. Which was
Oh, do they? Oh, I have to find that.
Mhm.
Well, see, but that's the kind of stuff, you know, the PowerPoint presentation that was developed over the years through the Department of Law is, I mean, it's okay, but it's boring and, you know, people I think will take away from that about 5 concepts, which is good, but yeah, if it had a cute video, that would be better. So how about boards and commissions for you? And, Bill, can we volunteer you for employees? That's the hardest one, it's the longest,
Sure.
okay? And then,
So you want me to do the elected
elected,
officials?
yeah, like that probably be perfect. And again, I think that might be the easiest thing, is just to copy that part of the code and yellow highlight the stuff that's not captured. The gifts, by the way, Bill, we've totally redone gifts, and I think, I like our gift thing, which should just be incorporated into this.
Well, that's where I was thinking, without
Yeah.
having looked at this thing. There's a whole thing on improper gifts, but I think some questions or little statements about, so, you know, Susie's parents gave a $100 gift to their teacher, you know, with a frown face. You know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we could really
Very,
alter
very
that.
clear.
Yeah.
As opposed to one, Susie's parents joined with several other parents
Mm-hmm.
and gave a gift,
Exactly.
making a smiley face. So
Yeah.
there's a difference between the two.
Right. So, Bill, on your thing, the gifts would be all yellow highlighted, because we would just probably incorporate that in.
And when do you want our comments on it?
You know, the sooner the better. should it be by the next meeting? I mean, I think we could, if people had the time to do this within 2 weeks, I think David and I could try to put it together and have, something ready for that next meeting. I mean, I think it really can be done and it shouldn't be a 3-year process.
Well,
Do
there's-
people have that kind of time? No, I would imagine.
I do, as long as you don't mind me keeping my code book.
Oh, I don't mind. And I'll-
I got to put them together so that I can look at it and make a note that I'm doing elected officials.
And I guess what I want to make sure is for Bill's benefit, because he's got the toughest one, is it's not I don't think we need a spreadsheet, analysis. I mean, I don't want you to put 100 hours into this, which you could easily do if you really wanted to. But, is that it's meant to be an easier process. I try to simplify it as much as possible. This whole section is not discussed, this section, and just write it on your code section. Because once we see what isn't in here, then we can quickly, then David and I can put that in quickly, decide whether we should add that or not.
Or can that be added by a few words?
Exactly.
and something
Or
else?
maybe
Yeah.
something that would be helpful is when you get to a section that you don't think is in here, either say not in there or say referenced in this code section, reference over to the state to say see state code, blah, so that David and I can jump to it quickly.
Did the committee give you any kind of timeline when they expect to be done?
They didn't, but,
I'm assuming they want to get it done by the end of the calendar year.
oh, definitely, yeah. Well, and I think it can be done a lot more quickly, let's just get it done, It doesn't need to be so impossible of a task.
So procedurally, what happens? We make our suggested changes to it, and then what happens?
And then once you forward them to Lisa.
Lisa,
But, oh, you mean, once
Then
we,
yeah.
okay, what you're doing goes to Lisa, that'll come back to Dave and I. And then after that,
Yeah.
okay, then after that, then maybe David and I can try to incorporate the ones. And I think, so he and I come up with a draft relatively quickly. And then that's what would come before this board, and that you may spend a couple sessions modifying, reviewing type of thing.
And then is there approval before the assembly?
Oh,
on
and
these
then it
on
would
the
go
regs?
back, your draft would go back to that subcommittee, the
Oh, I
Assembly
see.
Ethics
I
and
see.
Elections Subcommittee.
Okay.
And by the way, they're gonna be a little bit
present
busy
it?
coming up, because elections are here,
Right.
huh?
Did they then present it?
Yeah, and then they make any changes they want, and then they present it to the Assembly, yeah.
So it might take a year by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah, by the time you do
Lot of
that.
stuff.
Well, and they're not gonna do it right in the middle of I don't know how it plays out with a potential new mayor coming in, whether the new mayor would say, I don't really wanna touch this, but again, right now, we're going through the Assembly channel. The Assembly has requested this from us, and so we're gonna give them something back.
Because I can see like the first line would say, with this one, section 1.15, et cetera, is hereby repealed and replaced with, and move on to the new.
Oh, yeah,
code.
you
Yeah.
would totally repeal it. There were some who hoped we could simply modify this, but I said, by the time you modify it to condense or compact 3 distinct sections,
And they're just
let's just start over. One thing I do a fair amount of code writing is, some policy is obviously good for codes, but I mean, when you look at this first page of the state policy, you just don't need all that type of, unless it's a guiding principle. One of the principles that we have in one of our sections is that the appearance of impropriety is not enough. Now, that's an important statement, that says something, and it's a substantive policy statement.
That's good. You said you had to leave here shortly?
Yeah, I would like to leave this section if I can. About 12:30.
Anything else on this? since the other two members have left, leaving us with the bulk of the work.
So
Not
if-
that David's not working
If you're
diligently,
able to
but-
do this within 2 weeks, it would be very helpful. And if not. And again, I'm most concerned, I think Bill's section is the longest section.
Well, great, thank you very much. Not to, I'm not trying to shut you up, but that's.
Oh, no, this
Okay.
is fine. And I appreciate being able to go on the front end of the agenda.
Back to our agenda, we have review disclosure forms in the new code letter. And Lisa, you had some information on
Well, we finalized the new code letter.
A1. Go ahead.
So I did do the initial letters for those who need to send back the right form. And, but I think we have to now go through each one of these and make a decision so that, I can have the right response letter when they do come back in the right form.
So this would be in the green tab?
This would be the green tab, yes.
You know, I wonder if the board might want to consider some of these, like the very first one is 1018. And what are we now? We're 5 months out of that. Whether there should be just sort of a practical consideration that I wonder.
I'm a little confused. This was received by the clerk's office here on 10/12.
They've been coming back before the
Does this one
board
keep- does this one
every
keep coming to us
meeting.
month after month after
Yeah.
month?
And we've been trying to
And this was over, because it's over the $50.
finalize the letter.
Can I just quick see that letter? I just want to see if it would be still appropriate to these older ones. Okay, I guess it wouldn't be that appropriate to some of these older ones. Can I make a suggestion is to go through these and the ones that are the group ones, not even send a letter, it's probably past that time. You know, the ones we're not concerned with is not send any kind of letter and then start doing that form letter for the new ones that come in. A lot of these, of course, were Christmas time gifts.
Well, I'm going through these, I'm not seeing any group ones just yet. I'm seeing parents of the,
Oh, there's
of
quite a
one
few.
family.
Yeah, there's quite a few that are pretty inappropriate. Amazon gift cards. I don't know why they're all $185.
There's a few of them like that I'll just make a note on, but the first one is something that probably needs consideration. I think it's just, yeah.
Well, I agree. For example, the first grade students, if this indeed was this more than one set of parents, I've got no issue with the one on the Amazon gift cards.
Have you skipped ahead because I think we
I was just going through all of them here. But to look at the first one, that letter isn't, you said the letter wasn't appropriate?
Well, this letter is sent to the principals primarily, right?
to speak with the
To speak
teacher.
with the teacher.
Because that was, partly because they were supposed to be dealing with this, it
Right.
shouldn't be coming to us.
Uh-huh.
Because that was part of the disclosure, was trying to push it back to the
But
enforcement back at the,
Remember, the letter had 3 potential bullets. It's not just the one bullet. The
Oh,
bullet
that's true.
could be, you may not accept this gift.
Okay, so this wasn't the wrong form, for instance.
No.
This one would be, it's too much, or they're not supposed to spend it until, I'm looking at the very first one in the book,
Mhm.
that, the $80 gift card.
For the beauty salon. Right.
I think the bullet for that was this, something about not falling, not acceptable. we may not accept this in lieu of a remedy for.
Yeah, okay, so
Or
there
should
would just be a
Robert
different.
And if it's already spent, haven't we asked them to make a commensurate donation to a charity and disclose which one they did?
Not, I think that was more what APD was doing with their officers. I don't think that we've gone as far as to say, by the way, now you need to
Well,
pay restitution.
But as an example, if somebody's already gotten their hair done at U Beauty Salon, they've already spent the $80 gift card, they can't quite turn it back now.
Exactly. But I think that's too late. I don't think we should be saying months later, and by the way, please donate $80 to a charity. You know, it's sort of a restitution. You know, I think during this transition, first of all, this board has been very, very busy with all the politics that was going on and the different ordinances and the NOPVs. Again, unusually busy for the last 6 months. And, you know, trying to work with the school district on this. So some of these may just, to me, be too late versus some type of letter. And you have a bunch of those letters, don't you, right there? But it's all the same thing?
They're all mostly return wrong form used.
Okay.
Because you'll notice only 2 of these are on the right form. This
But
first one happened to use the right form, which she was informed on the form not to use
Right, it says.
the gift until you
Okay.
receive an answer.
Would it be appropriate, Dee, if we're having a significant issue with the school district and the wrong forms and
Mm-hmm.
then the process not being followed, we're supposed to go through the principal, that we have a meeting with maybe, you know, Mike Abbott and Todd Hess?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not that I want to meet Todd again, but
Well,
sit down with him, and sit down with both of them and say, we're just trying to work this out, you know, because we've noticed a significant amount of stuff that's still not being followed.
well, if you notice when you go through these, I thought it was kind of an overwhelming across the board, but it really isn't. About half of them are from Bowman Elementary. Another handful is from Sand Lake. There's a couple of high schools and Aquarian Charter, and it's not across the board problem. It looks like if we educate these few that are here, we didn't get anything from anybody else. I mean, there's basically 5 schools represented in these few disclosures,
Which is actually kind of alarming in and of itself.
because it means that people may not be disclosing at all.
You know, one thing we learned when we
That was
worked.
concerned that they were going to be shoving it farther underground.
Well, or they're not aware, or they don't understand when it's appropriate to do it.
Well, you know, one of the things we really realized last year was that they do training for the principals in the summertime.
Right.
And other than that, it's difficult to get through to their 135 some odd principals.
Right.
But not very effective after that one training session. And we were still sort of developing, the code was in by that point. I'm not sure whether the form was in or not, I don't think it was. And so this definitely is a transition year. And I like the idea of Lisa is, what if we dealt with them, and what if we dealt with that principal directly and said, look, here's a handful of ones that are, you know, we need you to do the correct form. Well, most of these, are they the correct form? No, they're not.
No, they're not.
We need you to do this, and please note that they need to not. So to deal with Bowman, one of my concerns is that it needs to go before, let's say it is clearly a gift that doesn't fall within safe harbor, $80, theoretically they have to talk to a ethics officer or bring it to the board. I'm not
Right.
sure that ASD has ethics officers, so that's probably something I should be delegating to Glenda to find out.
I'll call whoever I need to call and find out.
Or at least if you drag me into your office for 5 minutes, we'll do it. No, but to call it, because I doubt they do have an ASD ethics officer, is my guess. Or they just have put it in a personnel function from someone who's not even trained in ethics. My guess is really what's happening.
On this one, she went to the trouble of using the right form, and she was advised on the form not to use it prior to hearing back from us. I think we should close the loop with her.
Which one is this, the very first
This
one?
first one,
Christina.
Fernandez.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's over the dollar amount, and I don't know if she held it or not, but was advised not to do anything with it. She
Uh-huh.
did use the right form, she did report it. I would, for what that's worth, I would just think maybe something to her, or to the principal, just closing the loop on that would be the right thing to do. For all we know, she could be sitting holding it, waiting to hear back on, what next, and the principal may be doing the same thing.
Do you have an example of the too much letter, or you need to hold on to that letter?
No, because you all haven't decided on any of these, so I couldn't make up any
Oh.
of those letters.
Okay,
But
We finalized the principal letter.
just the right form letter.
The letter for the principals, we finalized that one?
that's
Yeah.
what this is.
Yeah.
But there were the 3 bullets. And it wasn't just 3 bullets. It was
Right.
just that there could have been 3 or more ways that you would respond.
Right, you're getting
One
this
would be
because-
wrong form.
Right.
One would be perfectly acceptable. You don't need to disclose this in the future.
Right.
Another one would be this is not acceptable. In lieu, here's the remedy. Here's what you need to do.
Right.
And have we not done that letter yet?
Yeah, it's the same letter except the
Oh.
bullet is different.
She just chooses which bullet to stick in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So the
Same-
bullet would
same
say,
text, right, I'm with you,
you may not.
whichever applies.
But the bottom line is we had several lines that you would actually have to write a remedy. And
Uh-huh.
it's on the form itself.
Right, in lieu of the following remedy is required.
Right.
So what historically has been the remedy? Donated?
Well, we haven't, in the past, we were
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
accepting them or,
In the
Or
past,
kickback.
until we got our new rules, we were
yeah.
just a floodgate of these forms. And we sent letters out to the ones over $50 and then brought a few people in that were clearly
I see.
$1,000
Right.
stuff.
Fishing charters?
So my thought
Okay.
was that
Simon,
you would
Julie.
have the letter
That's pretty
and then you
appropriate.
would return their request. And down here, there's no signature approval. It says in lieu of approval, the following remedy is required.
And we plug something.
And we
in.
plug it in and send it back.
Got it.
Interesting.
So what I'm getting from you is what is the remedy for this one, or what are we gonna do? What would you like the person to do?
I'm open.
If we get past this one, you'll find that the rest of them are fairly easy.
Mhm.
You're gonna say,
Yeah,
didn't
what
need
I
to
said on the
disclose,
other one,
didn't need to
yeah.
From my
disclose,
perspective,
yeah.
it would just, whatever the remedy is, I guess, may not be hard to craft, but then it's the ramifications, because there's gonna be more to come, and we have to you wanna maintain consistency, and you wanna maintain fairness in the remedy you impose. And it has to be something that they can realistically do. You don't wanna be arbitrary, and like the next 5 that come in, we craft all kinds of different lieu-ofs, and so.
Could it be even a call to somebody associated with the ethics board, and that could be anybody, I don't want to burn Lisa with it, or return of, or some type of, not evidence, but something, proof of, return of this or donation to charity. My concern is because a lot of time has gone by, that now they've used it at this point. And maybe this is the one hard one, that's why the remedy is have them required to talk to someone and say, look, what have you done, and did you understand this? And I mean, the purpose of this group is remedial anyway. I think 2 years from now, if someone does this, you would, say you need to return it, but we'd probably be dealing with it within 30 days, and they have had that training, again, better training next July. I don't think, I doubt that all the training was really in place this last July for the principals. And so maybe handled a little bit differently this year in a transition year.
I mean, I have to admit that this is only $80. It's only $30 over our limit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the limit that we gave them was $50.
Right.
And I would hope that they all know that. It even says right here, item worth $50 or less. It means they don't even have to provide disclosure.
Mm-hmm. So she knew this was over, that she had to
Yeah.
fill in.
And the awkward part is these parents. I talked to a parent who's in this file in here. He says, what right do you have to tell me how much I can give my teacher? And I said, well, the right provided by a municipal code. And, you know, it looks and smells bad when you give, you know, that you potentially you're giving, that you could be getting preferential treatment by your teacher because of the gift that they're receiving. Does it put the teacher under a burden to, you know, maybe, you know, puts them in an awkward position? Does it put the principal in an awkward position? So that's how, that's the reason that it was done that way. And, you know, do you tip the water utility guy when he comes by and checks, make sure everything's okay? Why is it a teacher gets something when nobody else does? But with respect to this, and this is, well, I mean, just my own personal opinion, if we have concurrence here, that because of the timing, we may need just to send this, at least this one particular one back saying, okay, you know, no action taken.
Well, remember the letter before used to be, you know, this is probably a violation. You could possibly get in trouble. I mean, we never told anyone you can't have it. But I'm worried too about the fact that it was from October and, you know, here we are in March.
Well, and to your point, we have had a lot more pressing items
Oh,
to
yeah,
deal with.
yeah. I mean, would it be possible for a 2 or 3 liner that simply said, and it would be Lisa, or I'd probably delegate to Glenda, a 2 or 3 liner that simply said, you know, although this might be over the terms, given the time elapsed, the board's taking no further action, but please be aware and give them a copy of the code. I mean, just a 2 or 3 liner, not a big deal. And send them a copy of the code.
Okay.
You know, you can even start out by saying thank you for filling out your gift
Right.
disclosure
Form.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for
form.
doing that. You are attempting to comply, really. They are, you know, I think they are attempting to comply.
Okay.
So a 3, I don't know if you feel comfortable,
well,
Lisa,
I
writing
can
that, or-
draft it and send Glenda a draft.
Glenda, do you mind? I keep reading these things back over to you.
Okay.
Look at it.
Okay. All right.
Did you ever encounter anything like this?
No.
Yeah.
This doesn't require my signature, anybody else's signature, does it?
Yeah. Well, the letter will.
No, when
Options
we,
for in lieu of if it's over the amount.
Okay, well, if
When we
Dave
were first
can't
getting
do it,
all
I
these
can do it.
disclosures,
One of
we
us
was-
is signed.
completely missed.
I'd like you to-
You know, I don't even get in trouble with Kathleen
And
who walks
that was
over and
one of
does
the
it. You know,
sections
it's
that-
because everybody's name goes on the,
Right.
on the
And I think
letter.
from time to time,
Because one person
Regular
signed
would
it.
call the person.
And I actually would like you to sign all of these
Right.
today
We never did anything.
for new forms, despite
If it
what we
was a
decide to do with them.
Yeah. But I'm also not sure we ever got one that really was very questionable.
What would you recommend on putting it in a remedy if we were to include one? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if we were acting on this in October, then it might be appropriate to say that she either has to, I don't know, returning it is a bit odd because then you have to go to the parent and say, no, I'm
Right,
rejecting your gift.
yeah, right.
I think the easier thing might be to say that you're reminded that the $50 limit is the presumptive limit. There's no special circumstances here for us to find that the extra amount here is consistent with the standard in the general rule. That being the case, you could either return the gift or make a $30 donation. That
Yeah, I was gonna suggest only $30. That's
And in the future, you might.
Yeah.
Future action, I think.
I think
Some of them.
part of what happened here is that one of the past board chairman of this chairperson and one of the current board members are very adamant about this gift. And I'm not sure everybody shares that, but now that the code has been rewritten, and the code was specifically rewritten to capture the teachers in a friendly way and saying, hey, we recognize the special and unique relationship for the teachers. And any gifts that come through PTAs or any other group form, you know, unlimited, supplies through the, you know, just not direct contact from the classroom teachers over 50. To try to soften that a little bit, but this did really arise because there were 2 people who were just adamant about this issue. They wanted gift giving from teachers at 0, and we just thought that was, you know, wasn't going to work. And as it was, when we went to the assembly, we didn't have a catch-all amount for everybody, for the entire municipal world, and they put back in $50. In other words, at one point, we had all these our discussions that why would you ever give a building inspector $50 ever, or $25 ever? But the assembly said, wait a minute, you know, you have to have some rule, and so they put back in 50. So, you know, the new gift code provisions were intended to try to sort of be a reasonable accommodation. Not that you're just dead wrong if you accept something, or we're just trying to recognize that we're trying to avoid the direct parent-teacher contact.
Well, and you yourself as a parent talked about how, you know, you give gifts to your teachers as well as others that had children in classes, and, you know, I give gifts. And I understand, you know, giving a gift, it's just a matter of, it has to be done through the proper way. And we gave them alternatives. You want to
all
give
sorts of
more,
alternatives.
give it to the principal, give it to the PTA, and let them handle it. Because we unfortunately had one that was a $2,000 gift given directly to the teacher for a scholarship to go to Walden School, was it?
I think somewhere.
And
For the
because-
teacher to get training,
Yeah.
advanced training.
Because the type of school they were in required this extra training to be certified to do it, and we didn't tell them to give it back because of what the purpose was and how it was used. But we said, okay, next time give it to the principal, let the principal.
But we
distribute it.
did what Bill's group did. We called them. There wasn't a letter. It wasn't a form letter. So, okay. Well, for this one, we saw the problem with a couple lines. And by the way, I'm trying, and I'm not the head delegator, probably your board, your chair is, or your acting chair today. I'm just trying not to give you two things to do, because you volunteered for the other rewrite, and so that's why I'm trying to send it down to Glenda if I can, or Teresa.
The next two are kind of interesting because they're both from Robert Stagg. The first one is perfectly acceptable because the donor, it came from a group of parents, $252, Joanne's Fabrics. But the second one seems there was a $250 amount that is attributed just to the Martins family. So that becomes a problem.
It becomes a problem, even though there's 3 students there, and you could potentially argue that you had a $150 limit. I'm
But
not
it's a
buying it.
$50 limit.
I know, but you had 3 individual students. You said over the last 4 years.
I
But
mean,
it's
they
still-
would
it's
have
still
been
well
better
over the
off
150.
including themselves in with the parents group and giving them $500 than separating themselves like that. And then you have to think, what is the purpose of separating yourself like that?
Especially since both of them are Joanne Fabrics.
Right. So that's an interesting one. And this one is from December, so it's not so latent. And he's used the wrong form. He may have already spent all the money.
Did you?
Well, are these worth calls? I mean, just a call, and let me ask you, if the board were to think maybe a simple call might be enough, or a call maybe followed up by a letter, I don't know if, Glenda, you would feel comfortable calling them.
What am I gonna say?
Well, in this case, her case, she's right. Had they done one disclosure form for $552,
Right.
or $502, excuse me, we'd never questioned it, because it's all to the same place, and possibly because they were just received at slightly different times, because they're different days.
I'm not sure we know that though.
Yeah.
We don't
No,
know
we
if
don't
it came
know.
from the class parents, meaning 30 sets of parents, or 2 parents, in which case it's still too much. Or the first disclosures were 2 gift cards, the second for is a disclosure for a gift card labeled number 2. So
Right.
I'm not sure that this isn't a Martin's family and one other family I couldn't remember the name of.
Right. Class parent.
Well, it's parents of 3 students I've had over the past 4 years.
One family.
But that was the
looks
Martins,
like.
but
Yeah.
the left-hand side, we don't know how many people are involved there. So I don't know, I think there could be a first phone call that just asks clarify who the donors were.
Well, it does say the gift was received from the Martins family. It doesn't list any other families.
I'm talking about the one on the left.
The left.
I guess the other thing I'd want to know is this is a charter school. By chance, is the sewing machine for use within the classroom?
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I would think.
It's kind of an odd gift to give somebody.
I'm sure it's a class, I would think for sure it's a classroom item. And the other $250 is probably to buy things to, use with the machine, sewing machine. But the conversation we've had before is make those donations through the PTA to the classroom. Don't make it from yourself.
Donate to the school.
Anonymous.
Entity.
Yeah.
The charter school proper.
That's not to say that you can't ask the principal to have to go to that particular teacher's classroom.
Right.
We never said we couldn't do that.
Right. No, that was
Yeah.
actually the way to do it.
Yeah.
And designated for a classroom. And then it becomes completely anonymous.
Provided the principal doesn't disclose to be able to.
I can call him and ask for some, I think we need more information. I think that might be the first thing. Ask some follow-up questions. One is he still have them, has he spent them already? Two, could he clarify this one form in particular, about the donors on that one where it just says class parents? Is it, Bill, it could be just another set of parents that he just didn't quite remember the name of at the moment or whatever. And then I think it's a fair question to ask if this was for purchasing, a product to be used that's going to become property of the school. Is he purchasing it for himself and he's going to have it in his classroom, but it's his property? Or is he purchasing it on behalf of and it becomes school property? And that might turn a little bit of it as well. I mean, if that's the case, I'm not. It still has a disclosure requirement, but I just think some additional information might be able to direct or steer the direction that the board might want to go with how they handle it. So I can give him a call and see if we can get some questions answered.
Well, then specifically the second one being that if it is from the Martins family alone, that's according to the new code is not acceptable.
Right.
And that should go and added to the PTA of the Aquarian School or to the principal of the school. But the issue is, now it's incumbent upon the teacher to tell them, but we don't know the level of the training they've had.
Well, obviously they have the wrong form, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'll leave that for Brenda.
I'll call him and ask him some follow-up questions.
Okay,
Guys, we used to have we've had 3/4 of an inch stack of these things to go through. This is actually really pleasing to only have just these few.
So William McNew,
These seem like,
That says students and their parents. So I'm seeing a group gift.
okay.
Am I the only one that sees that, or seems right?
Okay, so Angela Hardwickson.
Well, that one's $50.
Okay. I'm just having you guys make the
Yeah, I know.
decision. Laura Adams,
She's the right form.
use the right form. One family, 2 children.
$250 gift card.
Yeah.
Did we address that? Do you recall?
I think I wanted to address it. Did we address it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to remember, is whether we addressed, because I think there was some discussion of what happens if somebody has more than one kid.
I'm sorry, I've had It's been a long time since I looked at
We had
this.
so much time that we spent on that.
Okay, so this one was fine. This is my one where I said the request for gift exception has been approved. Please informed, da-da-da-da. So that's Laura Adams, right? Okay, so never mind. We did. All right, we pulled this one out. We made an exception to this one, I think,
We did.
because
For
it
Laura
was,
Adams?
because she called. This lady called. Okay, sorry about that one.
And was it because it was two different?
Two different kids, same family, but two different kids. And so people were saying, oh, maybe there's twins, or maybe they both have art with her. Maybe she's like an art teacher or something like that.
Right.
And they could be in different grades. So it's per kid, so
Okay.
$50. Okay.
The next one is 220, but it's for families. I don't know what SS students mean.
Social
Or
studies?
55 students.
Oh, 55 students. Okay, that's clear.
Holy Christmas, she's got 55 kids in her class.
Well, she may
I
have
hope
more
she's
than
a
one
music
class.
teacher or something like that.
Okay. Student's parent. Okay, this one seems to be over. It's old form too. But it's January, so it's not so far back. You know, even on the ones that have used this old form, so we might think, well, maybe do they even know that they're not allowed to use this before they ask for permission? What Bill said in giving a donation of the excess, you could still do that even if you didn't know and used the form,
entire
the
card.
the entire card.
So you could send a letter, ask them to make a contribution of $25.
And it-
And in the future, please use the attached form.
The right form, and $25 to the PTA. Is that who we're making them donate to?
I don't remember what you said.
Well, that would make sense, and it keeps it within the school.
Keeps it in the school to PTA. And then what Dee was saying, we didn't think far enough to, do we make them prove it? Do they need to send a receipt into the board? Or the fact that this is being sent to the principal, is that put it in her, chair to deal with?
Ideally, it would be handled at the lowest possible denominator.
Yeah, I don't know that, especially at $25, do we really want to require them to provide proof that they gave?
And
If
do
you
we
send it
want to
to the
keep up
PTA.
with all of this?
Yeah. We send it to the principal, let the principal deal with their staff.
Okay, okay,
That is their job, I guess.
okay.
So we're gonna, is that what this one's gonna be, is a letter basically saying the maximum amount is $50 amounts, this was 75, so the $25 value in excess, we would recommend a donation to
To PTA.
the PTA. But we're not gonna do that in the first one with the $80. Because of the time
Because of the time,
difference?
because it was since October, but I don't know if you're rethinking that.
I'm big on consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm big on consistency too. But
I don't wanna, I'm just an
Mhm.
advisor.
And then I
am
feel
big on
like-
consistency. I don't want it to look like we're all over the place,
Right.
depending on who you are, or where you came from, or when it
Mhm.
came in.
That's what I was
think
looking
it
at. I
should be the
thought
same.
it's a transition year, and if the first message that we send is, okay, well, that's sort of,
I mean, either route, I don't particularly have, an allegiance to. It's just whichever route we go, I think we should just maintain our consistency in it. And so, however, I'll defer to the.
I agree, I think we should suggest the first one to pay the PTA $30.
okay,
I agree. I'm comfortable with that.
okay.
It makes, one, for her sake, her point on consistency, and two, yeah, she said the right form, but I'm looking here at another one here, Purrington, two separate gifts that were received at Christmas time.
Yeah, this is one, how do you donate? I mean, do you donate?
That's a
Once
little
you've
tough.
estimated.
You can't offer, you know,
$100.
give them half a clock for crying out loud. But they can estimate a, you know, or give a cash donation to the PTA for the $50. Or they put the clock up as a, how should I put it, you know, these schools, a lot of them for fundraisers have, silent auction items. They put the clock up for silent, but, you know, horse tack equipment, they must know that this person has a horse. I mean, I've never purchased horse tack equipment.
Okay, our first pick. Okay. Because the other part is they estimated the value.
Right.
So it's almost like they penalize themselves.
Right.
I don't know, maybe a lot of these are hard, but maybe if we get through the hardness now, then it can become just a conventional way of dealing with them.
Well, I think for both these, which one are we looking at right now?
Well, they're both
The clock.
Cecil Purrington,
Yeah.
but I guess the clock first.
But they're both the same situation. They're
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
over the amount.
$65 donated back to PTA.
Yeah.
Okay. So 50 on one and 15 on the other. Okay.
Lisa Landis is,
You should probably give Cecil the option of returning the clock if you want, because you feel a little bad for this guy. He might have had a parent
Right.
walk in and say, here's $100 clock, and now you gotta pay $50 or
Right.
somebody.
Right, right.
Confiscatory tax.
And that may be the or option on all of these donations.
Yeah,
You
or
can
you can
return the whole
return it.
thing
Right.
or make a donation.
Right.
well, what if you make the donation to, as I mentioned, to a silent auction?
Yeah, which one is
Right,
over to.
right. You can return it.
PTA,
You
yeah.
can donate the item. You can reimburse for half the cost. List out several options and let them sort of pick the poison.
Okay.
So Lisa Landis has several parents. It says Bowes,
Parents?
I don't know what Keys has, TA?
Kindergarten TA, teacher's assistant.
Mhm.
So,
So,
I get
you
that.
think she's a teacher's assistant?
She's the relationship of donor to recipient. The gift was received from. She must be, it only makes sense. She's their teacher's assistant.
To the class.
To the class, yeah. And they probably took donations across a few classes. So that was. First grade parents, again, student parents.
Yeah, the
So this is-
$185 does kind of stick out, doesn't it? Because it's an odd amount. Unless
Just pass
like the
hat.
PTA had
Yeah,
a whole bunch
pass.
of money and they,
Pass the hat sort of thing, like, that's just a group gift again. Oh, is this the same? No. Oh.
Although we should penalize her for not spending that evening.
I'm sorry?
That should be correct,
That's
yeah.
right.
Every time.
I mean, might be worth calling to clarify that that really is a group gift.
Oh, these are both Sand Lake. Both
On
the
the
same
Nancy version?
amount, 185. So,
Yeah, I mean, you could read that as being a single parent too, single group parent or a single child parent.
Students' parents.
first grade students.
it depends on where the apostrophe is for the,
Why does it must be all parents?
there is no.
Are we on Trina Rose?
I think we're wrapping up Nancy first.
Oh,
and
okay.
Christie, McHugh,
Okay.
And I might put those in the category of the quick phone call to see if that was a group of parents or just a single parent or what's going on there.
Okay. Okay.
We're gonna become a resident from this person. I got this call from this lawyer at the bank.
I rarely open like that.
This one she used the wrong form, but it seems
a
that
really old
she
form.
mitigated her own situation there.
Classroom pizza party.
And is that acceptable?
Yeah, this is the ancient form where we couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on at all.
This is
So we
like,
have no idea, care what the storm is. But I think we can say, sounds good if you're gonna use it for a classroom party.
Okay.
but they still need to get something to the principal.
To the
They
principal.
need
So
to
we
have-
send the letter and then the
yeah,
principal.
Use the right forms.
Okay. Right, okay.
46
I know.
parents.
Well done.
Wow, thank you for.
Very good organization.
Good. Good, good, good.
So if you have a situation, and I'll just play devil's advocate, if you have a situation where you have two children or three children at one school, different grades or same grades, whichever, if you break it down and you give 3 gifts of $49, they're not having to report it because it's 3 different children, even though it's coming from the same parents.
They're going to the same teacher?
I mean, that's split gift giving is basically
Yeah,
what that is.
we have one of those earlier.
I know, and I have a little bit of heartburn about it
Yeah.
because there's a lot of rules about splitting purchases and splitting this and splitting that, and this to me smells like splitting gift giving to stay underneath the radar. If the source is basically the same source going to the same person, but we're making sure we stay beneath the threshold, but we do it 3 times.
But think about it. I've had multiple kids in school at the same time
Right.
in elementary, not in the same with the same teachers, but every child wants to give their teacher a gift.
Right.
And so if you're the person that gives the $50, gift card, how can you tell one child?
Well, so that's
We have
what
different teachers though. This is
Right.
for one teacher.
For one teacher, so is it based on, is the $50 gift per head of the student or from the gift giver, which is the parent? How do we, what's the,
Let's see what the code says. And I went back and read the code on this one because if they couldn't get around it that way, they could certainly, the code gives them plenty of room to get around it in another way because it talks about, here's what it says to allow for the $50.
okay,
An occasional small gift worth $50 or less, including business meals. Okay, so remember we talked about before about how do we define occasional. So the one daughter gives her $50 on one week and the next one gives it the next
right,
reporting period.
right.
So there's still a way that they could give $50 per child.
Right.
Or how do you define occasional?
That's why you guys have work. What's the
Yeah.
definition of responsible? What's the definition of occasional? Lawyer words. Which one are we back to?
Miss Keegan? I don't know if any.
Well, it says a group of parents, if
Okay,
there's
so
4
that
or
one's
6
been
other
done,
parents.
okay.
Same thing with Lindsay.
50 parents.
The other one is for $50. And well, these people all know she must really like to go to. Well, it doesn't say what the gift card is for that one.
Okay, are we on Sarah Lon Robert? Okay, so is this the donate $50?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The $60 Dana one might be okay because the perishable items are exempted separately from the $50 items. So the candy and the cocoa put her up to 60. If they were worth 10 of the $50, I think she's all right.
But just make sure, you know, Orion, when I went to Orion, I was a junior high school. But Orion Elementary, of course, the principal needs to have the right letters saying you've got to send the forms.
Oh, yeah, all of them are gonna get the letter about use the right form.
What is BOOP?
I don't know, I was just trying to like. Figure out what they. Something, oh,
Bowman
parent.
something.
Oh, yeah, Bowman, some parents.
But it's still a parent group, right?
Yeah, that's good. And here's one of the ones that use the right form. And what's the deal here?
They want,
Oh.
they want a drawing.
Oh, I don't think this applies, right? Or I mean, this is okay?
We've established, I mean, people aren't, they go to these meetings that they're required to go to, and then they have, sometimes the sponsors, there's sponsors that the school district has that, where we've had the same situation where the vendor of your software takes people on, you know, brings them down for trips, and we've allowed that.
This one is resolved under the usual standard of, even if it's not in the safe harbor, it's consistent with the public policy concerns, influence, appearance of influencing conflict of interest, because you don't influence people by setting up a prize drawing that randomly goes to someone.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Is apparently the Bowman, sorry, I just turned on, something operational program.
What'd you do? Put BOOP, comma, Bowman, and see what it was?
Okay, there's no gifts of elected.
Now, but do we still need, for an example, to Melanie Sutton at least go ahead and use it? Thank you for your disclosure.
Yeah, see, I was gonna say, in some ways, you know, we wanted to take the burden off of this board. In a lot of ways, this request for an exception almost, it kind of multiplied the work, because now, before, there was that form letter that we sent out. Now, each person has to be responded to individually.
Well, and actually, the form is set up, however, it's for one of us to sign and send it back to them.
Right.
Say it's approved.
I know, so I have to do a letter plus this for a signature to bring back, to be able to send
That
over.
was unintended consequence.
Yeah, unintended consequence. But the thing is, if the education were there and they weren't bringing them to the board, then there would be none of this work. So that's what we need to work on, is the educational piece. Okay,
So, other than my signatures for you, we're done with the gifts.
yes.
We can look at these disclosures of precedent economic interest.
Well, Dee said she didn't do her homework on this Miller letter, so that's going to sit here again another month. So I don't want these present economic interest statements to sit here another month. If we can just go ahead and accept all the ones that you're going to accept, then we can go back and apply the Miller letter.
So I'm looking to see something that I'm gonna.
Well, if you look at one and say, I want a Miller letter to go to that person, let me know so I can flag it, so that when we do get that letter approved, I can go back and send.
I don't think I'm
The
gonna
letter
ask
out.
to have one that's sent to me. Because we have our own disclosures, Dr. Kelly and myself, too. But we're not disclosing anything.
everybody seems to be using the right form except for a handful.
Seems like it's easy to just accept all the ones that have none and then flag all the rest for the Miller letter when it's finalized. Which is just thanks and here's what to be on the.
Well, an
lookout for.
example on Ken Ayers, somebody obviously put a sticky on it when they made a copy, potential conflict of interest.
Well, and this was supposed to come to the board a long time ago before his appointment, and unfortunately, he has since then been appointed without the board seeing this disclosure, so, it may warrant a little bit of attention. I'm see if I can find my email on that, because there was some pretty, adamant opinions that this person shouldn't even be appointed to the board. I don't know if I
Do you
have
know if
that.
the board has
Wouldn't I have
a requirement that somebody from the surveying business be
Oh,
on
no,
the board?
I don't know that, no. I had that email with me
Just
for a
like
long
this board,
time.
for example, requires requires at least one attorney.
Right. No, I don't know that.
Who wrote potential conflict of interest on it?
I don't remember, that was a sticky that was put on this.
Oh,
I can't remember whose writing that was, but I know there was quite a bit of email going back and forth. I think Dee was a part of this email discussion.
From my
Should
point
this
of
be
view-
one that we don't accept and wait until we have Dee and the full board to look at it, or?
We could potentially do that because we're actually relatively current on this one, but without knowing Mr. Ayers or more about this one, but looking at it just on face value, he's indicated how he would plan to handle his conflict. If a client did come before this board where my firm had an economic interest, I will disclose it and recuse myself.
Well, you have the question too about, is this,
Is he
survey-
required, is they required to have a survey or engineering firm on, representative that, on this, because
Yeah, I'll check that out before next time, and then I'll also find my email, regarding that discussion, so that we have all the information. I know they held this one over, a meeting just because there was concern about this, but it went through this last meeting. So, okay, so did you all get a chance to go through all of them, and is the motion to accept all of those that have none?
Yes, second.
Okay. And then I'll bring back before the board. Well, I'll just keep track of the ones that we may want the Miller
Just
letter
wanted
for.
to discuss maybe for a little more, Bardley Croom. He's with Coconut Tug and Barge. When you read his disclosure, there's a lot of, he's been on the board for 2.5 years. He may also be one of those where he's required, they're looking for somebody with expertise.
Well, I know there was another one, Dwayne Adams from the Board of Adjustment. I believe somebody asked to hold that one over for a Miller letter as well. Because I guess, Mr. Adams has been on the P&Z commission for a long time before coming to the Board of Adjustment. So, anyway, I'll keep track of that.
You said Adams?
Dwayne Adams, he may not be in your folder any longer because I have it paper clipped in the back to hold the Miller letter. So we're gonna move forward everything else but the,
That, are you okay with that, Kathleen?
Yep.
okay.
The new bill? Yes.
Okay.
What else do we have to do on our agenda?
And we got lots of stuff to do.
I'll have to make sure I sort of follow the agenda here. We reviewed the disclosure forms. Compliance reports.
We can postpone that because Dee was supposed to have Therese Williams and Stephanie McSwain join us for a discussion on those two parties putting together compliance reports. Therese Williams would be the LURSA boards, and Stephanie McSwain would be the municipal boards. But they're not here, so I suppose we can
We can
just
get
postpone
the
that.
compliant- You're talking about the compliance and filling out the disclosures? Is that the reports, compliance reports you're talking about?
Well, there's an example of,
There's one back here on the
like,
last.
I put
with the
mine-
goldenrod.
after the goldenrod, I put my compliance report where it stands as of today. And as you can see, I've only got, the 3 assembly boards, salaries and emoluments, Board of Adjustment, and Board of Ethics, so.
You guys had a meeting last night. You couldn't say you can't leave here till you fill these forms out?
You mean with the assembly?
Yes.
We didn't have a meeting last night.
No.
And
It was Tuesday, but you've had one since the last meeting.
I know, but it's a little tricky to ask. I need
I'm
to
just
ask
giving
that
you
in
that.
just the right way, so I haven't gone there yet. I've been too busy to do that. But anyway, can we postpone that? Okay. And then,
Proposed amendment regarding disclosure of present economic interest.
and I suggest we postpone that until after the ethics rewrite, because it seems like that might get all rolled up into that ball of wax.
That was my gut feeling. So the next item is which should probably be something that Dave will attend, is the next meeting of the Ethics and Elections Committee.
Okay, I'll notify Dave.
And
And-
you're suggesting to wait till after the election on the political activity rewrite, but it sounds like political activity rewrite is all being rolled into the new write-up.
It might be the same deal there. I just-
So Kelly's not here. On unfinished business, Bill, did you get a chance to do the review of the board's opinion on advisory opinion 215-1?
Yeah.
Wow, somebody did homework, because I didn't get mine done. I had like 2 days notice. Oh, you need to write this report.
I did mine in about
Yeah.
Bill's was done almost instantly after the,
I had to go to Hawaii, so I
Yeah.
before I
You had to go.
had to go.
Okay.
So,
Well, we understand that, the priorities there.
okay.
So that's 6,
C.
Oh,
wow, we might actually be done today.
Yeah, I'll move to approve that.
Okay.
Of course, he's already been informed, and then it became a null and void issue because the assembly didn't pass.
But I think the importance of this was to
Well, we
have
need to
this
set the
available,
precedent,
yeah,
yes.
set the precedent.
Looks great.
And then with approval, I'll also be able to publish this on the website.
And he waived on that one, on this
Mhm.
one, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, that's like in the first
Right.
sentence.
Okay, no objection?
No objection, and if it's ready to go, is there anybody have any issue with having Bill sign his own letter?
It's not ready to go. I only had this draft here.
No
So,
changes, just take off the watermark. Just-
I know, but I still can't have a sign it. I mean, I'll have one for you to sign by next meeting, but then I'll just put up an unsigned version until next meeting.
Okay.
If we're gonna date it for today, we might just tweak some of the tenses in the first page. They sound like it's no longer considering this, right? So recently considered the proposed AO 2515, whatever. But
Pass down.
pretty minor.
Okay.
Okay, now you're asking for approval to publish reports of potential violations.
Those were both these items, so I'm gonna have to roll that over. I was really hoping this meeting was gonna be all about cleaning up this agenda, but
Well, does he have to?
she was gonna ask permission. They're already on there. They've been on there since the very beginning, and then there was this question about, oh, maybe we should ask. We'll leave them on there until I ask, but then this is rolled over for
After the
probably
opinion's
6
made,
months.
It becomes public, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to give you approval, but I can't speak for these two.
So it was for 2. Both were notices of potential violation, but there was no violation found. So what's on there right now are scrubbed versions
Okay.
Of the complaint.
of the complaint.
Of the complaint.
Yeah. Well, not of the complaint, of the response.
The response.
Scrubbed versions of the response.
So we were here for these. These were both notices of potential violation. What do we end up saying?
No violation.
No violation.
Which is, thank God, the predominance of our notice of potential violation.
I mean, for one, the Terry and Dee went to speak with a person, and a letter was written to the person, and this was when Terry was chair, and we created a scrubbed version, but it's very obvious who the person is, even in scrubbing it. You can't get around it.
Right.
Well, based on the person's position.
Right. And then the other one had to do with the school board. Was it the school board? No.
It was a really, if I recall, a really strange thing, and the whole thing was all kind of convoluted.
But again,
But
it's...
there was not enough evidence to be able to accept it as a violation, because we have.
I thought it was the one about the bonds, the school board bonds. Stayed out there forever and ever. And then,
Oh, but unfortunately, but the state law allows them to spend a certain amount of money.
yeah, and there again, it's
That's
scrubbed
something I'd like to work in the new ethics code.
version. Okay. Write that down on your list.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't, I mean, they're there. You know, the board didn't say take them down until we decide. They said leave them there until we're just going to go through the back door and get some permission here. One, Dee was going to call Mike Abbott, and the other Dee was going to,
Yep. I remember. I
Yeah.
read it on the agenda or on the homework.
yeah,
So I guess I'm a little confused. These were both ones where we found there was no violation.
no violation.
So
Correct.
why is there anything public to publish at all? If the board does not find a violation, the board should prepare a confidential statement of closure listing complainant and respondent. At the sole discretion of the respondent, the board may release the statement of disclosure as a public document. And then the written report looks like it's only created at the conclusion of an investigation finding a violation of this chapter that is not resolved by the board under some other provision.
Well, and because historically, all of the notices of potential violation have been listed on the website by subject. And I think the board had decided at one time that it is helpful as an educational tool to put scrubbed versions up, just so that anyone looking there might say, well, how did the board find in the past, without revealing too much information. And I don't know if this one just came up because it's so identifiable that there was a rethink on that, because we just sort of, as a matter of fact, made the scrubbed version and published it. So if you look at the website now, it lists every notice of potential violation. It lists what was being claimed to have been violated, this specific code section. If it's confidential, the notice itself does not link. If a violation was found, the notice then links plus the report response links as well. So otherwise we had just these, notices out there without any sort of information for the public to, hey, well, whatever happened with this? We just put no violation found, which we could do that, but they just thought, well, it'd be helpful for the public to know what the thinking of the board was. Is this ringing any bells to you?
The
Dennis, but I also
NOPV itself
understand
is
his
up
point.
there?
Uh,
A redacted NOPV is,
no, the NOPV itself does not link unless a violation was found, and then it's not redacted. It's the notice itself.
right, but others are up there.
And there's like
If there's no violation found, are they redacted? Or there's nothing?
it's just a little blurb saying what that notice of a potential violation was claiming to have.
It's not like, you don't click it and it's the PDF to the end.
No,
Or
no,
redacted version
no.
of the NOPV itself.
No.
Okay, that's what I was
It-
trying to.
yeah.
Okay.
But would we find ourselves in violation of ordinance, current ordinance, based on what he just read, if nothing was found or we didn't accept it? Because generally that's how it happens, we just don't accept it.
Well, on those two, were they accepted? They were accepted. They met the initial threshold,
Mhm.
if I remember how those played out.
And they were investigated.
And they were investigated, and then the opinion was drafted finding that upon further investigation, no violation was found.
Right, right.
So you're saying, does the clerk's office have permission? Are you expecting permission from the respondent to post it? Is that what you're asking?
I think that's what Dee was
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
gonna go. It's a bit after the fact, and seek
Well,
permission.
2013, Chris, I was
Yeah.
thinking last year.
And I think it was even
Last
said at
summer,
one
sorry.
time that she said, it's almost like she said, I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine, or that she had found out somehow that it was going to be fine. But I kept it here just because I wanted to hear her say yes on the record.
Well, I think we should keep it on for next time and have that conversation with Dee, because I think the way the code's written now, that if we didn't find a violation, we're not supposed to put it online.
Okay.
Unless the respondent says, go for it.
That's worth a conversation, because if everybody agrees on that, then there are ones from way back in the day that we need to pull, then redacted or not, so I'll keep this on.
The issue I have, and I understand the point that we do an awful lot based on case law.
Right.
What have we done before? I'm not saying we've never reversed ourselves, but we typically, what has happened is sometimes the board has stepped out and done things. Oh, I guess one time that something was totally unexpected is when the board said that sitting assembly members may not get a free ticket to the mayor's charity ball because of the unrestricted access that people would have to these people at that point. So, they got to pay for their own way to get in. That was before my time, but that was something that.
And that's one of the ones that is
Yeah.
listed on the website historically. So I think that's what it came about, was there was so much work that was being done that is in no way documented, because we just say, violation wasn't found, and that's the end of it.
Right.
But I think members were thinking in terms of their training responsibility, that maybe some sort of something should be out there.
So like Phil said, it says at the sole discretion of the respondent, this is where no violation is found. The sole discretion of the respondent, the board may release the statement of closure as a public document. To dot i's and cross t's, he was thinking of
Gonna-
going back and getting from the two respondents explicit permission to have those, they're redacted, they're scrubbed, but it, it's still not, in most situations, not.
I'm wondering
subject to.
if part of this item, if you sent Dee a notice, can you please check with the respondents on these two to get permission or lack thereof on these two items so we can close it out next time?
Yes, I will do that again.
I
I
know.
do that every single time. I try every single time.
It's on the homework, I read your
Yeah.
homework list.
Yeah.
And then what she'll do is she'll forward it to Glenda.
Linda, will you get permission?
But I'm not ready to get Glenda the homework directly.
There's a little difference there between she and I in our positions, though. I'm
Yeah.
a little more, no, I'm not a little, I'm a lot more hesitant to approach the mayor or Mike Abbott about stuff than she is.
I'd call Mike Abbott and say, I've known him since he was like this tall, so I could call Mike Abbott and tell him anything, but the mayor's another story. Just because you know what's in high school doesn't necessarily mean that I can.
I hold a very different position than Dee does, too. So.
Okay, so it's 1:30.
So it's getting long a time. I'm not ready for the annual report. I'll come up with some suggestions for topics and get them out. Or I'll just have it done and then people can make suggestions at the next meeting.
Well, that's why that was there. I was hoping members of the board would give you some
I know, but it's very
suggestions.
difficult for these two to suggest something when they were.
No, I
here
mean,
last
it's been
year.
on this agenda for months now,
We
so.
haven't gotten this far on the
No.
agenda for months.
That's the suggestion for topics for the annual report?
Yes.
Okay.
Typically, we kind of review,
Hit the
2 or
highlights.
3 things that we did this last year, and we have plenty for this last year. But I'll go through and come up with something and we can review, maybe even approve something by the next meeting.
Okay, that
Geez, if
would
we
be
get it done
awesome.
before June, that'll be a surprise to the assembly.
Yeah.
Any member comments?
Well, I have a suggestion insofar as us processing these disclosure forms, and I don't know if this might end up being more burdensome, I'll just throw it out. At the APOC, we had a lot of these kind of forms to go through, and we would work them on a consent agenda. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where we were given these disclosures ahead of time, and then the staff would recommend how to address them, and by certain criteria, we would just, in our own minds, agree to it. When we come to the meeting, we would just go through the consent agenda and just agree to what was provided for the most part, and those that we didn't, we would pull out and discuss, but it just moved it along a lot quicker. I don't know if that's something you want to
I
consider.
like that idea.
That's a great idea, but then it would depend on people actually taking a look at those if they're sent out ahead of time, and I don't think that always happens with this board.
I'm willing to look
So-
ahead of time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can put that here's where we're gonna go with this, but it does require that you actually take a look at these and have your exceptions in mind.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. And I feel like once we handle these, we're not gonna see hardly any until,
End of the year.
well, if not Christmas
I
time.
mean, end of the school year.
Yeah.
I meant, end of
But
the-
those
end of
disclosures,
the
as
school.
well as these notices of potential, those that have none on, unless somebody knows somebody personally, and they didn't disclose on their present economic interest, there's really not much need for us to even look at them. But, I mean, we need to look at if somebody has personal knowledge about somebody and they're not disclosing something. But I agree with her, that, we just
Because I can create a portion that is our consent agenda. Include those in there, and then we'll just deal with exceptions if you want to pull
Yeah.
items,
just like the assembly does.
just like the assembly, yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
Move to adjourn.
We move to adjourn. We are adjourned.